Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is not a normal episode of the podcast, I am afraid. I am your co-host, James the Bunyip Willis, and I'm here with my co-host, Jonas Time for Terminus Galway. How you doing, Jonas?
Cut it all off and end it. Whatever it is, stop it right now. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's going. I don't know how much longer it was planning to go on, but it's got to stop. It's time for terminus. All right, trains stop here. Buses stop here. You on the pedestrian, on the street, the listener, wherever you're going, stop.
And more importantly, this podcast stop here, because this is a little announcement to let you know that after about 5 years, I think. We are ending the Bunyip Review Podcast. We've both very much enjoyed most of making the podcast and maybe not some other bits of the podcast. But we've decided we're going to bring the normal monthly version of the podcast to an end. Jonas, do you want to talk through a little bit about why we've chosen to do this?
Yeah. So definitely, like, a lot of what I say is true for me. We've already discussed is kind of true for both of us. So one of the major points is like this podcast. It's been really great to talk about media and games and TV shows and films and things, but it's also completely changed the way that we kind of like interact with those mediums. It There's this kind of element to the podcast where we're always trying to bring something new to talk about. So we're trying to not, we're trying really hard to not just, we can't just revisit the same game, the same TV show, the same film. And we also can't review, because we've kind of put these rules in place to make sure that the media is of a certain quality, which means I won't review a film that you've reviewed as my film, right? Like, we'll bring something new to the table. And what that creates is you watch a great film one month and you tell me about it. And then I go, fuck, I'm not going to watch that film now because I'm only going to watch one film next month and I have to talk about it on the podcast. I have to. And so it creates this thing where we would just be like, oh, shit, we're not going to consume the media we actually want to consume. We're going to consume media with the podcast in mind as a primary. And then as a secondary objective, we're consuming media that we actually want to consume if there was ever that conflict.
My save file of Baldur's Gate, I got to sort of partway through the third act, and then we did the award show, and then I was like, great, that's it. And to this day, I have not played any more Baldur's Gate. I was really enjoying it, but I had to move on.
Yeah, and yeah, there's so many different things, right, where it's just like, I just know that if you watch a great show like Westworld or something, it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to put time into watching Westworld because I need to put time into watching something that I can talk about on the podcast.
Yeah.
And on that front, there's also this like the stress of deadlines where it would be like this moment where I'd realize, oh shit, it's 3 days until we're recording the podcast, and I have not watched a season of television, or I have not watched a film, or I have not played a game that I can talk about, like I can review. And so this like feeling of like, oh shit, well, I now have to overhaul my weekend, stop doing the thing that I want to do, and I have to force a piece of media in, often under like really awkward like circumstances. Like I'll watch a great show, but I'm forcing myself to watch it in like the least comfortable kind of time frame, which turns what could have been a great show into homework. Like me scrambling to watch something and squeeze it in, and then telling Jamie like, oh, it was a great show, but I watched it while I was actually working because that was the only free time I had. So I can't really tell you, like, it didn't really have emotional depth because I was writing an email while the show was on in the background, and it just, we became less able to actually kind of review media on its own merits and more like kind of showing each other our homework that we completed. I think is a big thing. And then it's just the time constraints. The actual 2-hour stream is, that's one evening in a week, in a month. But we have become incredibly, disgustingly, insanely busy people with social calendars, with work obligations, with lots of other little projects that kind of fill our time. And all of these projects enrich us, and the podcast also enriches us. But it is now just becoming another thing on our plates. And then for me to take the responsibility of making sure that I sit down, open the audio editing program, edit the podcast, publish the podcast, write the description, go back through everything that we reviewed and provide links and references and things like that, became such a sort of an inflating workload in my brain that I would put it off until the last possible day of the month. often causing us to spend twice as much money on our hosting privileges.
Yeah.
Which, yes, okay, easily fixable with scheduling, but we've been doing this for 5 years, and it's not a problem every month. But when it is a problem, it just definitely impacts all of the joy and the positivity that we have associated with the podcast as a result.
Yeah, I think that it started, the whole point of it at the beginning was that we were constantly monopolizing conversations with talking about things we were excited about, and we wanted to funnel that into something. And now it's not about things we're excited about at all. And when we are excited about something, we often talk about it off the podcast because we're not ready to talk about it yet on the podcast. Yeah.
It's also this thing of a lot of what I'm excited about are sometimes things that I know you won't be excited about.
Hmm.
Anime, very
Yeah.
like, specific JRPGs or Final Fantasy kind of adjacent products. So I know that if I play like certain games or TV shows or films, I know that you'll be excited about those. We could talk about those in a private setting or whatever. I could message you and say, "Did you see this? It's really good." But then sometimes all I have that month is bullshit that you don't
Yeah.
care about. I care about it, but I know that we have different tastes. Same, like, you're excited about City Skylines like recently, and
Yeah.
I know that's not my genre of game. I know
Yeah.
that Stardew's not my
And
genre of
I know it
game.
too. I know it too.
And so, but
Yeah.
but we've created this really, like, this fun thing that sometimes we actually have to talk about something that I know you don't want to hear
Yeah.
about.
So,
Yeah.
so what happens next? Basically, is the big question. So we have a lot of back episodes of the podcast, and at the moment they're all hosted on a podcast hosting site that we pay a monthly fee for. So we're going to investigate a way of moving them to like a free hosting or something like that. But what we plan to do is at least until the end of the year, we're going to keep paying to host it on this site, and then at the end of the year we'll stop paying for that, and either they'll just go away from that RSS feed, or hopefully they'll end up somewhere else that's free, and we'll keep you updated on our various social channels when that happens. What we'll also do is we'll make a YouTube channel where we'll upload all of the old audio podcasts, so they'll at least be somewhere forever, and you can get hold of all of them. But if you still enjoy spending time with me and Jonas, just because the podcast is going away doesn't mean that we're not going to be hanging out online anymore. Basically, what this is going to open us up to do, to allow us to have a bit more energy to do, is do more fun, more interesting things we're more interested in with less preparation. So at the moment we're streaming monthly episodes of Dokapon Kingdom, which, like, I have not laughed that hard at a stream in a long time after we did our first episode. So I'm so excited for more of that. We plan to hopefully at the beginning of next year bring back Head to Head, which was a series we did a long time ago where Jonas and I compete on various games. And again, one of the most fun things I've ever done on Twitch. So I'm really excited for that to come back. And just more ideas, like more opportunity to just try things out and see what we can do. Because if you don't have to write reviews and edit it after the fact, you can just turn up with your empty brain space and give it a go. The 24-hour podcast is still happening. Nothing's changed with that. That is going to be the only podcast, and we're going to attempt to do that. We're going to do it this year, and we have ideas in our mind for doing it on future years as well. But we'll talk about that year to year. For now, the 24-hour podcast is happening on the 23rd of November, from 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. So come join us for that. It's going to be great. It's going to be good fun. But yeah, we couldn't leave the Bunyip Review without, because this is technically an episode. It's going to go up in the audio feed of the podcast, so we couldn't leave it without a review in the podcast. And so for the final review of the Bunyip Review, we are going to be reviewing the podcast itself, the Bunyip Review. So Jonas, tell us, what was your opinion of the Bunyip Review?
I guess really what we're reviewing is we're reviewing the creation of the Bunyip Review, right? The process. Because I don't know about you, but like I've only actually listened to a handful of completed, fully edited episodes. right?
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Dare I say, there's probably a lot more there's probably a lot of content you've just never heard because
Yeah,
because of the way that I finalize the episodes when they go into audio formats. But yeah, I think, I mean, one reason I wanted to make sure that we sit and review this podcast because I really want to talk about like what it's done for me in terms of like a lot of like confidence and growth and having something that I can like tell people is mine over the last like 5 years. And I say mine, I mean ours, but in the sense of like I make something. I make something with my friend. We have this thing. It's not my job. It's not this organization that I'm just a small part of where I've got this like singular responsibility. It is this very much this equal stakes product that you and I make, that is, I think going to be hugely emblematic of like our relationship for like a lot of the rest of our life. We might make something that eclipses this, we might make something that replaces this. There might be something that we talk about more fondly, like Dokapon Kingdom, or we just stop talking to each other because of Dokapon Kingdom.
yeah,
But this is representative of like, I don't have a single friendship in my life that has something that I can click on the internet and say, this is what that friendship made. This is what that friendship is. So to me, Bunyip Review is very important to me in that respect. It's also just given me like a skill that I didn't really have before, which is like I'm now pretty good at editing like long form audio, like going through sweeps of wave files and two different voices and synchronizing and volume matching and kind of snipping and whatever. I feel a lot more confident navigating DAWs now, which is great because I want to do more independent voice acting and voice work. But the podcast to me has always been this hobby that makes me feel like it kind of has enabled me to do more audio engineering and work more in the audio space. Whereas without the podcast, I wouldn't have, I don't know, I want to say like literally 300 hours of like audio editing under my belt, something, something silly like that, right? Yeah, so that's kind of what the Bunyip Review kind of means to me as a product. Does it mean anything to you? Have you already forgotten it?
I've immediately all blanked in my brain. No, I really love the Bunyip Review. I think that like, um, I think that while we struggled to find a format that worked for us, like that fit into our lives, I really liked, like you say, like making something every month that was a thing, that was like, it was an actual show. It had like a running order. We wrote stuff for it. We it was a product that we put out that existed in the world, and that was really fun. And it was really nice. Like, we didn't have a huge listenership, but the people who did listen to it were always telling me how much they liked it. Laura would listen to it while she was wandering around the house, right? She was just listening to me talk. She won't let me actually tell her about things I like, but she'll listen to me do it in a podcast format. And I really like that about it. I think I loved that we had a regular meetup because both of us are really busy people who live in two different cities, and it was really nice to get together with you every month. I think that's partially why it started to feel more and more like we didn't talk around the before and after the podcast so much, and that's another reason why it's going to be really nice to move to more sort of chatty formats, because I like spending time with you and chatting with you.
You would not believe how much shit I would withhold because I'd be like, "Oh, well, that I can't talk about that now. I have to say it on the podcast."
Yeah,
Like sometimes I'd just watch or play something incredible, and I would be like, "I am not going to message Jamie about this because, like, I want to surprise you on the podcast."
yeah,
I thought the product of the podcast will be better if I spring this on you, if I make it a genuine surprise as part of the product we make. And that would just mean that, yeah, that authenticity of like, oh, Jamie, I just played this incredible thing, or I just heard about this. Have you heard about it? I'd be saving that for on camera, which is when like we're less authentically able to absorb information. We're less
yeah,
authentically able to like, sit and open Steam and watch a trailer and be like, oh shit, that does look good. Like
absolutely,
we'd
yeah.
have we'd have to engage in conversation. Not that that would always be terrible, but it would completely. It's a different landscape. It's a different relationship with media and friendship and recommendation.
but this is about what we liked about it, and what I liked about it was that we had a regular catch up every month, which is not something I have with everyone.
Mm.
And lastly, I think I really like, and I want to see if I can do something with it outside of the podcast. I
I knew
really
you'd say
like the
this, yeah.
randomizer because it started as a silly thing that I sprung on you in the very first episode, but like I genuinely think that we've watched a bunch of stuff that there's no way in hell we ever would have watched any other way, and we had real fun talking about the shit ones, like bantering back and forth about how awful Aloha and the Byzantine cat and things like that were, and also we watched some things that were genuinely pretty good, right? And there's no reason we possibly ever would have watched those things, but we came away being like, yeah, like Stree. Like Laura still talks about how much she liked that film, right? That so I really enjoyed it. It gave us a chance to do new things. It gave us a chance to try new things, and yeah. But I think we can find better, less intense on us ways to do some of those things. And I'm hoping that we'll take what we've learned from doing this, and it will go into all of the future things. I've learned so much about like doing a live chat show basically over Twitch. That we took a lot of what we learned from this and put it in the last year's 24-hour podcast. We'll be using it for any future head-to-head stuff we do. This has been like a foundational part of learning how to use Twitch and live TV production, and it's going to stick with me forever, I think.
There's been something really joyful about I I don't really describe myself as someone who like watches that many films or TV shows these days. But the podcast has made me actually be that. Does that make sense? Like
Mm,
I watch because of this podcast, I've watched 24 films a year minimum
yeah,
for the last 4 to 5 years. And like that's kind of a lot more than I think it is. That makes sense. Like I don't think I've seen a lot of films, but there's actually a spreadsheet that proves that I have seen a lot of films
yeah,
and that I have not only seen them, but you and I actually have, if you think about it. We have a portfolio of like I don't know, 3, 4 times 4 years, whatever, like 4 pieces of media we have sat down and written, not to a professional standard, but certainly to our standard. We've written our thoughts down. We've done our best to find vocabulary and find language and find dynamic and interesting ways to present media to like audiences that don't know this media. Like trying to talk about games, knowing that like non-gamers are listening to this podcast, trying to talk about films and trying to sort of like realize that people don't know the context upon which that we're about to talk about this film. Like, you might not know why it's quite interesting that I watched Puss in Boots: The Last Wish last year, but actually I think it is interesting that I watched that because it's got this massive relationship with Shrek and DreamWorks and Spider-Man, like the latest Spider-Man animation films that I think are interesting to talk about and cross section.
I haven't seen Spider-Verse 2 for exactly the reason that we do this podcast, right? And
Yeah.
and genuinely, I was thinking earlier today when I was thinking about we were about to do this, like what I'm probably going to do is go away, look at all of the things you've reviewed over the past 5 years, and start picking out ones that I like the sound of that I never watched, like or picking out games that I like the sound of. I've had like there was like a chaotic, like a really stylish murder mystery game, that you reviewed a few years ago. It's like a sort of action game. You sort of run around and talk to
Is
people.
it Paradise Killer?
Paradise Killer. I've
Yeah.
owned that game since you reviewed it, and there's been no time that I can play it where it made sense. So I'm now having my sort of podcast honeymoon where I'm going back and I'm gonna play through all of your hits that I like the sound of, and finally
Oh.
learn what it means to be Jonas.
I've got. I wanna really quickly. I'm gonna just scroll through some podcast titles, and I wanna just grab some highlights.
Okay, yeah, that
So
sounds good.
first of all, I just want you to know that we started. So we recorded back in February, right? And that was
Yeah,
live stream only, 2019. So back then we were talking about things like Hitman 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But our first published episode is, I believe, July 2019. Let
Okay.
me just double check that. July 2019, where the title was, and I think this is kind of emblematic of the entire podcast, really. Bollywood Strikes Back.
Hmm.
Because that was the Netflix randomizer, like absolutely coming and like hitting us in the nuts.
But you remember how things shifted over the time that we did it, right? Because there was a lot of Bollywood, and then we started getting like more like Eastern European movies, and like there was a period where it was lots of stand-up comedy. Like it did feel like it went in phases, even though that's not how it works at all. But it felt like it shifted.
We definitely started to have more trends of like, oh, okay, so we're in the phase of we had 5 stand-up comedy specials this month,
Mm,
and then the next month it would be like, oh, next year we'd be like, right, actually we had like 4 like documentaries. Like, what a
yeah,
weird thing. No, you're right, but also what I loved as well was our attitude. I think like my attitude towards Bollywood, my tolerance of Bollywood changed massively because it
absolutely, yeah.
went from like something that was like one absurdly too long film to like 7 absurdly too long films, but I started to see the quality spectrum of like,
Mm.
okay, this is good Bollywood, and holy shit, let's talk about that. And this is what the fuck were they doing for 3 hours, Bollywood? We have to talk about that.
You reviewed a Bollywood film off your own back partway through. You reviewed RRR. Like
Which if you haven't seen, that's another
I
one that
still
you
haven't
got to
seen
put
it.
on that backlog
It's gonna be on my backlog list. Yeah.
because it is genuine. It's really good. So like we started with Bollywood Strikes Back. I'm like looking at like Carol Baskin's killed Peppa Pig. So like that must have been when we were going through the Lion King arc, but we got Peppa Pig as a random film, and just knowing that
Tiger
we,
King, Lion King's a very different thing.
that one,
Yeah.
yes. Oh god, it is, isn't it? 0 out of 4 people found this review helpful because we'd always be reading IMDb reviews, right? As
Yeah.
we were like looking at media and
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of finding it really interesting.
I quite enjoyed and I know one of them was a title for one of the recent ones we released, but us coming up with new genres for games. So squirt person shooter
That's very recent, yeah.
and papers like which I think is a very good term for a very specific genre of game.
We need to make notes of those just so that we can't lose them anywhere, right?
We'd send
Because
a letter to ourselves with them so that we've trademarked it, so that we know, like, if anyone else like comes up with another term, we can be like, no, we did it first.
earlier this year, he can kill me, but he can't act. Sorry, Conor McGregor, you're here for the final episode, but I stand by that absolutely.
um,
Yeah, the
what?
Modoc diss track.
Oh God, yeah, that was one of the only times where I pre-wrote a review about 2 months before, and I oh yeah. So for that review, I saw the trailer for Ant-Man, the Ant-Man movie, and I wrote a bunch of jokes about what he looked like before I'd even seen the movie. I just wrote like a whole list of them, and then I watched the movie, and then I worked it into that like just monologue about how stupid he looked. Yeah.
And what do you know? Content, right? Like 10 out of 10 content that that 31 people at least have downloaded and listened to.
Yeah. Well, it's been really good. It's been a really good time, and I'm really glad we did it. And I think it was a really fun idea that we've had a lot of joy out of. But I'm really looking forward to what we do in the future. I'm looking forward to silly game things. Maybe there's another podcast idea in the future that isn't like exactly the same idea that every other two like 30-year-old men are doing at the moment. Maybe we can come up with something actually genuinely unique. Uh,
Did you okay, so I need to like insight check you here. Did you almost have the temptation to say 2 30-year-old white men?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I often think like, yeah, the idea for our podcast is like, yeah, we're just 2 30-year-old white men and in lockdown, aren't we? But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but that we have to tweak that one slightly.
There was definitely a feeling every time I heard that joke. Like every 2 30-year-old men make a podcast. That's their personality, and I was like, yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
like, oh shit, I'm kind of one of those people. Oh no.
And I think if we ever do a podcast again, it's either going to be much more inventive or much less. It's either going to be like a real unique idea, or it's going to be absolutely no preparation, just a conversation. So tune in to find out which one of those it is.
I'm just gonna start. I'll call you every month without telling you I'm recording it, right? And we just sit and have a conversation, and then I just secretly it's a
Genuinely,
podcast.
one of my favorite old podcasts was the Yog Pod, the old Yogscast podcast. And what that was large chunks of it was just Lewis from the Yogscast recording their like voice chat while they were playing WoW without telling people he was doing that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
I see that'll be us next time we sit down to play some Helldivers 2 or something. One of us is just going to be secretly
Well,
recording the whole
they
thing.
won't need to because it will probably be on Twitch. So,
you know what?
yeah.
Fair point. Yeah.
So, we're going to sign off here for the last time, I'm afraid. But you can find me on twitch.tv/the Bunyip Man, where we'll be doing all sorts of fun things, definitely with Jonas for a lot of it. On Twitter at the Bunyip Man, and on Instagram at the Bunyip Gram. And I'm also on Blue Sky at the Bunyip Man, but I don't use it very often. I need to get back into it and like actually try and use it because it's becoming a big thing. Yeah, you can find out information about all the stuff that I'm going to be doing and potentially Jonas is going to be doing in the future. Jonas, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I was saying earlier, Blue Sky is really popping off at the moment. It just shot up from to 10 million users over the weekend because Twitter did some fuckery with its safety protection tools and blocking tools. So I'm trying to now be more active on Blue Sky because I haven't historically. You can find me on Blue Sky very easily using the 4 letters JTTG. JTTG will help you find me on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram, Jonas TTG as well. I think those are the 2 best places to find me, really.
And if you do find us in those places and you did listen to the podcast and you did enjoy it, please do send us your favourite moments. Tell us what you liked about it. Tell us what you enjoyed about it. And let us know what you'd like to see us do in the future.
Yeah. This is our fun fact, everyone. This is our 69th episode. So
That's the real reason we're stopping.
everyone, please just whisper to yourself, nice. Nice.
All right. That's it, everyone. See you later. Bye.
For the last time. Bye.